This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Good evening and welcome to the Easthampton City Council Public Safety Meeting. Today is November 12th at 6 p.m. We are in conference room 1, both in person and remotely. All members of the committee are here, myself, Owen Zarat, Salem Derby, and Brad Riley. So welcome. I don't see anyone else to admit online at this time. So this meeting is called to order. We have minutes from October 8th. Did everyone have a chance to review those? Yep. Thank you, as always, for your exquisite minutes. I'll
make a motion to those minutes.
Motion to approve from Councilor Derby, a second from Councilor Riley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. If you could please send those to the city clerk at your earliest convenience. Yep. Thank you so much. Public speak time. At this time, there's members of the public here who want to speak to an item that's not otherwise on the agenda. I usually have separate public speak for agenda items. Do you have anything else? And again, I don't see, someone wants to join this call. Welcome. Thank you for joining. You joined just as I was announcing public speak. We will have opportunities for people to speak to specific items on the agenda. So if you'd like to speak about a general public safety, public speak item, now would be the time if you'd like, with raising your hand physically or virtually for those who have just joined us online. And not seeing that, we can move on. We don't have a quarterly report this month. On the agenda today will be the proposal to reverse the traffic direction on Daly Field Road and Nonotuck Park. Let me pull up the info I have on that. So just some background, Director Mason had reached out about proposing an entry over near the Stone House, as opposed to the way, as people know, it normally flows now, where people drive down Williston Road to Lowndes and essentially take a left into the park and then a left out of the park and travel down Daly Field Road to get out. The proposal is to change the traffic pattern coming in by the Stone House at the end of the Williston Fields there, traveling in, taking a right into the park, and then thereby be able to take a right out of the park to go down Lowndes and Williston. One of the reasons being that will kind of, the two right turns kind of cleans up the traffic pattern, as well as when there's things, especially in Saturday mornings or Saturdays when there's games, there's a lot of backup onto Williston Avenue, which can cause a lot of congestion and disruption to those neighborhoods there. He mentioned the cross traffic pattern. I'm just reading some of his notes here. And so that would not only be a movement of a relocation of the traffic pattern itself, but also the toll booth might be relocated somewhere that would obviously be more friendly or fit in more with that new pattern. So we do have two commissioners here, and that's definitely not a quorum of the Parks and Rec Commission. And it looks like Director Mason was not allowed to make it. He had messaged me earlier that he'd be in Boston, so he wasn't sure if he'd be able to remote in. And I don't see any urgency of this topic, so we'll definitely want to make sure that we get him here for comments at some point. So I'll start first, as I typically do, with if there's any preliminary comments from the committee members about this topic before anyone?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think this, for me, it makes a lot of sense to do this for a couple different reasons. Number one, I think having traffic go by the Parks and Rec's office makes sense going into the park, as they can kind of, if they have personnel there, they can, and that could be a natural spot for a toll booth with a little turnaround right at the corner of that field potentially.
Mhm.
So that could be less work for, but anyway. Also, if you think about the way that right now cars come in from Williston Ave, they take a left, and cars that are coming out have to take a left out and they cross.
Yeah.
So you have, and that doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
So it makes sense to have cars turning in right and then cars exiting right. Then they never cross.
Mhm.
And so I think that on its own probably justifies this. I will say my expectation of any resistance from this would definitely just be neighbors,
Mhm.
you know, because people don't like change, and they
Mhm.
especially don't like change in their neighborhood.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think we should be aware of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to be clear too, the director had proposed this, and I would support too, that I think the way that this will be structured is we'll have kind of an opening background discussion. We'll probably have to at least now have another meeting with Director Mason here present to weigh in. And then we would find a way to basically advertise a public forum for people to give their opinion. And then probably either at the end of that meeting or then one more, we can make a recommendation to the council. I'd have to look if we would need a public hearing for this. I feel that it might be the type of thing where I might push for that because of the public nature of it, but we could talk about that. So
yeah, I mean, I think that sounds good. I would say, you know, it's important for us to make sure that we allow people to have voice on this. I think that if we let abutters know and just let them know that there's going to be you know, an open, if it doesn't have to be a public hearing, but it can be an open hearing where you can take input.
Right.
You know, I guess public hearing in name only, but
Yeah, we could put in that section below, like for.
But I think that would be all you. I don't think you'd have to have multiple public hearings. I think you could, because since this is just a change of direction,
Yeah.
I think it would be, you know, as long as everybody is kind of aware, I think it would be fine to have one public hearing.
Yeah. I just mean an open forum in this
Yeah.
committee, and then whether we have to have, yes. Appreciate your wisdom and input as always. Any preliminary comments?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, the only open-ended questions that I have is, you know, is this merely just for us to weigh in on as a city council, or, you know, does this require having to go to like the zoning board or the planning board, like if we're building a new toll booth or anything like that? No, okay. All right. I mean, that's really the only thing I could think of is just, you know, what the entire political process looks like.
Yeah, I think it's basically, so we'd be amending traffic rules in order, although, and so it probably would be a hearing actually. So we would amend the traffic rules in order to list specifically the way that the street goes. So,
Is it currently in there?
It's not.
I didn't think so.
But it should be.
Yeah,
And
so we just
we'd
add
be
that,
adding
that's all.
it. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So it's just fixing something that doesn't exist.
Correct.
So
Yeah, which is actually really honoring some of the other work that we're doing here, we're reviewing it. So I really feel like this is a really holistic conversation. So we have two commissioners here. We have Commissioner Henninger and Anderson, one in person, one remote. And I certainly would be, I think because of your role, I would elevate both of you to be more of the collaborative piece of this, as opposed to just having to participate as public commenters. So if either or both of you would like to make any comments about that, I would certainly welcome that. Commissioner Henninger is here, so just by a physical show of hands, and then Commissioner Anderson, if you're interested, you could use a virtual hand. I see Commissioner Henninger first, and then we'll recognize Commissioner Anderson afterwards. So please.
Just to clarify, John did talk to Diane, the city engineer, and said the road is park property. So there wouldn't be kind of the typical hoops to jump through or process to jump through in terms of making the switch. But Director Mason and all the commissioners agreed we would certainly want a public forum to get input and have that weigh in, because it would impact the neighbors. There would be a change, and there could be things we're not thinking of from their perspective. And so we definitely want to do that. Something that you didn't mention is that The idea is that it's not the current booth that's there, but that John has another prefab building that would be dropped a little bit into the park, kind of right past where like that access road is behind the basketball courts. And that there's a line there, so there could be electricity for AC and heating for the person working the booth. I know in the past he's talked about how hot it gets during the summer working in there. So that would be a plus. And also that they would be, because of where it is, they could make a second lane. So people who have the passes on their window wouldn't have to stay in line. So it would really open up the traffic flow. And it's great that we have so many people frequenting the park, but especially on Saturday mornings, but you know, other times during the weekend too, there's pickleball and baseball and soccer going on. People are just going to access the park for the playgrounds. And it can get really congested and delays things down there. So the commission has brought this up to John Mason and he has kind of taken that next step. So we're definitely excited to get this kind of moving in the direction so that a change could be made, hopefully before opening in the spring, if that's possible. But yeah.
Anything else?
Not that I can think of, just from kind of what's been shared so far. I wanted to make sure I added a couple details and clarified where this came from.
Great, thank you.
Oh, sorry. One
yes.
last thing we would also like to include, not just the neighbors, but people from the board of baseball and pickleball and soccer to get their input as well at that kind of open meeting.
Okay, absolutely. That's a great point. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Anderson, would you like to weigh in?
If I can unmute, yeah. Hi, thank you. I don't have much to add. I think Kira covered a lot of it very well. I think highlighting I think that this change would really increase safety with not having to have the crossing traffic between entering and exiting and kind of really prevent, I think there is still a fair bit of people coming in the wrong way on the exit, just to kind of avoid the booth at times. And so that would take care of that. And I think too, the best time for us looking at this would be to try to do this before the park opening so that we could create signage and not have the opening be part of the opening be the change, so that
This
we're not
government
going to change
meeting is
something
brought to you by Eastworks and our
midstream
local
and have
cable
people confused.
subscribers.
So if there's any way for us to do that over the course of the winter, I think that would be ideal.
Yeah, no, so thanks for both your input. Yeah, I mean, so from 40,000 feet, I think this is a great recommendation. I don't have any issues with it. I always rely on kind of the inside expertise of different departments or commissions in this case, or both, as to knowing kind of their own turf. And so, you know, the parks way better than we do. And so there's definitely a weight to me as to the recommendation, but this just also logistically makes sense for the reasons enumerated. And I think also just, I wasn't even thinking about the opportunity also to open up flow for people who weren't having to pay for admission and had season passes to be able to just drive through, which is another source of backup. I don't see any reason why this can't be hopefully completed within the next month or two, probably just, you know, based on people's schedules. We do get in the holidays, but I think certainly by opening in the spring. I do think we have to be, and that would really come down to, we wouldn't really offer directive as well as maybe some input, but I think, you know, being really thoughtful of signage, like a very visible right turn only sign as you are leaving, as well as really probably visible do not enter signs in the direction of the way that people used to leave the park are things probably to think about. I think that it sounds like since you have the city engineers on board, they probably have already thought about those things. And agreed with, you know, making sure that we have a well advertised public speak opportunity in this committee. I guess I just have to double check too in regard to, you know, with the park property thing, it's still a road. I don't know how that works. I mean, I guess.
You said it's a park road.
It's a park road. Yeah. I mean, again, it doesn't make a huge difference to me. I guess the fact that it now has fallen into a city council, whether it needs a public hearing or something that's public hearing adjacent, like it's in our committee, we'll have a vote on it. But I do appreciate kind of the partnership. I'm trying to think of any other thoughts. I mean, I don't, we're not approving designs per se, so I don't have an issue with the idea, and that's so any other thoughts?
I just think, one of the other compelling arguments for me is that if there's a electrical line there, that can really, potentially avert as summers get hotter, have someone be stifled in there. So I think that's important. I think what you said about on Garfield Street, I think maybe even more than signs, there should probably be some sort of way to mitigate people coming in from that end. And it's gonna be tough because there's residential houses right there. So, and they park in the street, and that, I think that will have to be given some thought. Which maybe, I think you're right. Maybe it's already been given thought, but
Right.
If I was concerned about something, that would be one thing.
Yeah, maybe we could request some more, because the designs I have now are more at the turn at the gate. So maybe we can just, I could talk to the director between now and then, just ask for some more expanded.
I mean, I don't
ideas.
necessarily, I don't personally need to see that necessarily. I think it's just putting it out there that's probably one of the things that would be, an
Have to think
important
about.
factor.
Yep. I mean,
And that, I think,
yeah.
I think that, again, this just seems to make a lot of sense in a lot of different ways. So even from closer than 40,000 feet, I think this is probably a pretty good idea.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Anything from you, Councilor?
I mean, this is just really sort of a cross committee reflection, but I remember in the appointments committee, when we were doing the appointments of you and to Carolyn, who is online, that these were some of the things that you all brought up that you wanted to address when you were being appointed. So I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for the work that you're doing. And it's rewarding to see those kinds of ideas starting to come to fruition. Like my counselor said, this makes sense. And I'm glad that you both put your eyes on it and saw that it was a good solution. So thank you.
Okay, so I think we kind of,
Can I add just one more thing?
absolutely.
I was checking my notes and just, because it always comes down to cost. John said it would be very low cost, that the city engineer would be able to draw up the plan and that the DPW could do the work. And some of the park workers too. So it would be very low cost to the city as well to make the change.
okay, because we have made a fair amount of appropriations to parks, and I think that we're out. No, I'm kidding.
Don't say that.
No, whatever it takes. All right, so I think we have some consensus. I think what I'll do next is I'll coordinate with Director Mason. And again, he was in Boston today and said that he wasn't sure if he'd be able to log out remotely. And so we'll find a time. It may or may not fall on our regularly scheduled meetings. We'll figure out what works for him. I think I'd like to get him in the room and then schedule like a big public input session. And then, I mean, we've got a big buffer here to speak to the concerns. I mean, when does the park open?
There's like a soft opening the last week of April.
Oh, we've got tons of time. So
This shouldn't take.
Okay. Any closing comments from either the committee members or the commissioners? Okay, great. Let's talk briefly. We've had on the agenda for a while these kind of like lingering kind of little items on the ordinance review committee's final report. I think one of them had to do with kind of finally kind of sitting down and hammering out what we want the language to look like around bicycle helmets for kids. And I forget what the other one was. I think it actually was something that required the solicitor's input. But the bottom line, at least from my opinion, is that these are things that should be addressed, but also that we could dismiss this item so it's not constantly here. We can just work on them and bring them back as individual items unless the committee members have any concerns about that. I do think I think we've agreed that we shouldn't be fining kids for not wearing helmets, but there should be some sort of way around education. We can address that at a later date, and I'll work on that. So if you two agree that at the next council meeting, I'll probably move to dismiss that item without prejudice.
Sure.
That's okay.
Yeah, that works for me. It's honestly, I feel like the less information that's on our agendas, if we're not going to get to things, then, you know, at least the public doesn't expect that it's going to be talked about. So, you know, if that's not there, I mean, not that anybody has come and asked about this and probably 2 years or more, but still, yeah, just some nice housekeeping.
Okay, great. Roadway infrastructure and pedestrian safety items. I don't think that, and kudos to everything going on Union Street. I don't think that anything else has come my way. There was a request that I saw for just some enforcement and radar signs on Mutter Street for speeding there. And there's been some conversations with a resident there and police. Oh, I will add, just to go back quickly, I'm sorry. I did speak to the PD just about the proposal for Nonotuck, and they didn't have any concerns. They just had thoughts again about signage and making sure that we're directing people well. The citizen request to consider a citywide speed limit. I kind of just wanted to have a very preliminary brief conversation about that and just get some thoughts, and we can have a more robust conversation another time, because I don't want to keep putting off the traffic rules and order discussion. On that topic, so they've done this in cities like Worcester and Holyoke and some other big cities where I think it makes sense. I'm not just saying it doesn't make sense here. I'm saying that we probably have to really look at our streets and say immediately, like, well, what would the exemptions be? And then basically agreeing that like small neighborhood roads and stuff would be 25 miles per hour or lower or less. And I think that totally makes sense. Whether we do that by adopting GL and saying that, having signs up that say that, and marking streets appropriately that are less than 25, or just kind of doing it the way we've done it now, where it's a case-by-case basis or more. Like, I don't have an investment either way. I want to honor this request, and obviously things like East Street, Holyoke Street, West Street to some degree, Northampton Street, Main Street. Those are places that would have to be exempted from this, and probably some other ones.
I think am I allowed to speak?
You're always allowed to speak.
I think that the way that the citywide speed limit works, it's 25 unless otherwise posted, right? So, so you wouldn't necessarily have to change anything because it's otherwise posted, right? So, and I think, one of the things, are we talking about this right now?
Yeah. I just want to get some preliminary ideas. Yeah, it sounds like we're having. Yeah.
So one of the things I would be interested in hearing is PD's take on it, because are there streets? Because I know that there's streets in Easthampton that aren't posted at all. So what currently is the default speed limit? 30. It's 30.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is really 5 miles. It's not that big of a difference, really. But it would get free signs, I imagine, from the state to put up at like at the beginning of the city. Like to say that's 25 speed limit.
Right.
So maybe that's the incentive, is like, so we can post it and make it clear. I was interested to hear if there were any like reasons for police in unposted areas to not have the speed. Like if they stop someone going 50 on an unposted area, is it more beneficial for them to have it be the default currently or this new default? And that's just one of the questions I had about it. But
good question. Yeah, I can circle back with them. Councilor Riley, any?
No, I mean, I talked to some folks at the police department and the fire department, and I mean, I think even they, unless there was like some sort of, high speed chase, right? Even with the, fire department or the EMTs, I mean, they're not speeding as well. violations for that kind of stuff. They don't have to be following those speed limits. I would just say that, you know, there were some reflections in a previous meeting from someone who works in a hospital. And I also spoke to other people that work in healthcare settings. And it doesn't seem like a lot to reduce the speed limit from 30 miles an hour to 25, but the impact on a human body from 30 to 25 is significant in terms of increasing your chance to survive the impact. So, you know what I mean? I think from a policy debate, it does seem a little foolish on whether or not we're talking about 5 miles per hour citywide, but you know, I think the reason why this conversation is happening is because we've had people die from, you know, being hit by motor vehicles over the last few years. So, you know, that would be, you know, my initial thought is that 25 makes sense because what we're really talking about is, you know, maybe it's like 80% chance of dying from impact versus like 40%, right? I mean, and you can't control human behavior. I know that people have said that as well. Those are the outliers. But if we at least mitigate all of the people who are willing to follow the rules, I feel like there's at least some unmeasurable benefit towards people's health and well-being. So,
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it makes me also think of the fact that how many times, I don't know, over the last 8 years even, have residents come to us saying people are going too fast. We need some sort of mitigation. And so at least if we are bringing this forward and we're bringing new signs in the community, we're going to raise awareness because we're going to have a, you know, public hearing. Like, then at least we're doing something. And so I think that you know, even the perception that we're trying to help and like putting that out there, I think could be beneficial because it raises awareness.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm overall in agreement. I agree with all your points as well. And I mean, that's what we spent a lot of time here talking about reducing speed limits. We've actively reduced speed limits on a couple roads. Just remind me something on West Street. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, I would want to look into some of the mechanics, like for instance, like, are the signs free or do we have to pay for them? I mean, that's just kind of just like more just information, because at the end of the day, if we vote for this, then the city has to implement it. Yeah, so I don't overall have an issue. I want to just still reach out to like DPW and police. I did talk to the police a little bit about it. They don't seem to have a concern. And I think what we all reach out to purely PD, fire, and DPW about what they think for those exemptions, then we could put those all in there and send it for. I think for all the reasons outlined, I don't have a problem with it. You know, because there's also still might be some streets where we have to talk about 20 and 15, and we'll get to those at some other time. And so
is that would be the, so what, I'm curious, what exemptions?
Oh, like, unless otherwise, like some of the,
unless otherwise posted.
Yeah, but
I thought you were gonna like identify each street that had a different speed limit and put that in there as like some sort of exemption, which we wouldn't have to do.
No, but we might want to have a list of some streets going into the conversation to say that just to tell the public, like, here's places where it's still going to be posted. It's going to be faster.
Right.
Just for information.
Yeah. Just
as we have
like
the discussion.
Anywhere that's posted, it's going to be different.
I guess that's true, right? But like, for instance,
even if it's 10 miles, speed limit 10 miles an hour, it's posted, so the speed limit becomes 10.
Yeah.
It's unless otherwise posted. Right?
I'm thinking where it's going to be faster. We're just going to specify the people that like that. Yeah, that's all. I just wanted to try to gather more information.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, and like I said, I'll reach out to those departments as well. I guess we do have 2 people here. If anyone wants to speak as just members of the public on this. Okay. All right. So traffic rules in order. Let me pull up, I guess what I was thinking was we can kind of go line by line, and if there's any recommendations, I'll tell you where I was planning going up to tonight. Find where that was. This is the fun part of the meeting. Okay, so tonight I was planning on going up to through the definitions up to Article 4. That's so basically page A10. And going forward, I'll let you all know probably what we're going to do in subsequent meetings. So
in terms of how we are documenting this, I have a lot of things that we should change. For the minutes, do we just emphasize right now that this is the areas of the document that we reviewed? Because I don't want to have to document every instance of an edit that we made, or do we have to do that?
No, I think you could just say what we reviewed. If there's a substantial discussion that happens, I think that should be documented.
Okay.
And then ultimately we'll just discuss and hopefully agree on these changes as we go through each section, and can kind of create a master document.
Yeah. Okay.
And then and we can just reference that. Do you think that sounds reasonable? Okay. I didn't really look at making specific changes to the table of contents per se yet.
Probably
So
last.
yeah. So I'll start at Article 1, the definitions. Did anyone have any specific changes to make to the definition for the bus stop?
So I had one, I
Did
thought,
you have something before that?
no, officer. Everything, I mean, up until there, I thought they were fine.
Okay, all right. Oh, well, I'm gonna go one by one.
Are you going one by one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
Anything for bus stop?
So just before that,
Okay.
and we'll have to have the conversation afterwards, but under Appendix A, so the page before that, in the editor's note,
Yep.
there's just a lot of outdated language.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll
that
look
we'll
at
have
that.
to
Okay,
bring
yeah.
that up once we make our edits.
Yeah, I haven't didn't look at that. Did you look at that? I think I had looked at another areas.
No,
So
I
we'll review that and bring
Yeah.
it back to the next one. Yep,
Yep,
okay. Okay, bus stop, channelizing island. Nothing. Crosswalk. Divisional island. Driver, you had one?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the thought here, and I should say there's no harm in leaving it there, but why does it need to be there is that there is language about having the guidance or control over any vehicle or horse or other mode of conveyance. And I just think, technically, I'm sure if somebody were on a horse in Easthampton, I can't imagine that people would be like, you can't do that. But when is the last time you've seen somebody using a horse as a primary mode of transportation in the city? You know what I mean? This feels like language from the 1950s, probably.
It does. I agree, and that jumped out to me too. But it's just a definition also. So in terms of getting into where it is or isn't appropriate to necessarily ride a horse on the streets of Easthampton,
Right, no, I know.
that's not necessarily specifying that. So I don't know. What are your?
I passed over it. I didn't really care just because I was like,
Yeah,
I
right.
mean,
That's not a laugh.
it could be
Right.
giraffe. It doesn't
Right,
we're not.
yeah.
It doesn't
So-
hurt anything for it to be there unless we decided there was some rule that you could not drive livestock through.
So
That
my
would be different.
my inference from that was that in terms of the things that one would drive, it's very specific that it would be a motor vehicle and specific to a horse, not like a giraffe or a cow
Yeah,
or
yeah.
a camel, although I guess technically, and then, but it also then says or other mode of conveyance. I mean, I guess you could change horse to like, I don't know if draft animal would be the appropriate term or like, but again, like, so then are we getting into like, because then it says or any other mode of conveyance.
I mean,
Uh,
historically, the reason why that's in here is because like that's what people came down from the farms on their horse.
Right,
Right.
That
yeah,
was like very typical in the 1800s.
yes,
And somehow they thought it would make sense because there was some old definition that they used to keep that in there.
right,
And so, like, if we take it out, it's any other mode of conveyance. That's fine. I mean, contemporarily, it'd be better to use bike because that's more that would be common,
right.
right? So,
Although bicycles, I think might be like a separate.
maybe.
Yeah,
I
maybe I
mean,
have to look, yeah.
but I mean, they can take the lane there.
Mhm.
They are I think
Right,
they're
right, right.
technically considered. But I digress. I think that we might be here for 10 years if we do this with every.
Yeah, I agree. And so
That's-
I would
that's
just,
not
I would
the
just
way.
leave it alone and just say, yeah. We could flag it if you want, and I could do some research about it.
I mean, I think like the easiest thing to do is like say whatever. Like this isn't super
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
But the next easiest thing to do is just to redline it and then just say
Yeah.
vehicle or other mode of conveyance. I mean,
Yeah,
is that
I've
is
got
so
all the
general. Yeah.
Mhm.
color coded things in
Yep.
here.
I mean, I guess here's the thing is that, and there's probably rules about it, but like, well, here's the thing is what you could potentially see is someone riding like a horse-drawn carriage on the road. You don't see it as often,
Right.
but it's not impossible. And I have seen it on very few occasions in town. So I would just, my gut feeling would be to leave it.
Okay.
And again, it's a definition because we're not talking about directing the use. We're just, so.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Emergency vehicle, funeral, heavy commercial vehicle.
All right. So the definition of a heavy commercial vehicle no longer is 2 1/2 ton capacity. We have plenty of SUVs and pickup trucks that exceed that weight. So the EPA uses the legal definition of a heavy commercial vehicle now to be greater than 8,501 pounds or 4 1/4 tons.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Why can't I edit here? Well, we should use the appropriate definition. That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Are you writing some of these things down? Because what we'll do is we'll probably have to have a main document then with our agreed upon edits and like maybe on a Google Drive or something like that.
Yeah, so I just have right now it's a PDF with my thoughts on it.
Okay.
I can't right now edit the PDF, but I can afterwards. So I'm going to open up a Word document.
Mhm.
And then if we have any other things that pop up, I'll make a note of it and then
Okay.
change the master document when I get home.
What'd you say that was again? Greater than
8,501 pounds or 4 1/4 tons.
Thank you. Okay.
We can make that as a note later too, is that, if there's a document like that that's going to be updated, you could say, see also EPA guidelines on, for some of these definitions, because some of them are going to be more dynamic than us.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Intersection? Nope. Lane. Officer.
So,
You said you had
yeah.
something, and I know, yeah, we probably have the same ones here.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it didn't necessarily say, it said investigator, officer, and investigator, examiner, or inspector of the registry of motor vehicles, any constable or special officer. Now, so that the constable and special officer means Easthampton PD.
Mhm.
But I don't know if everybody has their badge displayed, and it has gendered language. he has his,
Mhm, yeah.
over his left breast.
Mhm.
So we should remove the gendered language,
Yes.
and also, they might have their badge if they're a detective and they're working an accident. They might not have it over the thing, so that could probably be removed.
That's a good,
They might have a badge in their wallet.
yeah,
Or on their belt. I see officers a lot of times with badges on their belts.
maybe,
So-
appropriately displayed as
Yeah.
per department guidelines.
Yeah, so that was my thought on that.
Yeah, and yeah, I think, well, I think generally, yeah, and I had I mean, I think everything should be they, them.
Yeah.
They, them,
Just like-
there, yeah.
Anybody can be an officer.
So what language you want, like, badge of office as appropriately displayed per department guidelines, would that be acceptable, or?
Yeah, I'm sure that's fine. And,
Right, and obviously, yes, so there's like he should be they
Yeah.
as his, we can, so we'll just agree.
take out gendered language.
Yeah, any gender language should be they, them, there, okay. Yeah, that's a good point, thank you. Official current marking?
Nothing with the actual definition itself, but this is just a note throughout the document, that some years ago, the Board of Survey became the authority of the city council. So,
Yes,
we will have to change all of the Board of Surveys
Mhm.
with the city council.
correct, yeah, and yes, agreed, same, yeah. Yes. Official street marking. Official traffic signals. Official traffic signs. Parking. It's a very interesting definition. It made me think a lot about what parking actually is. Pedestrian. Railroad crossing. Recreational vehicle. Roadway. Rotary traffic. Safety zone. Sidewalk. I was thinking about that. I can't remember. We've had this conversation. You have to remind me because I keep forgetting. Can we or can't we ride bicycles on the sidewalks here?
We can, except
Okay.
for certain spots, Main Street, Cottage and Union.
And a bicycle is not considered. It's not considered a pedestrian, or it's right.
So well said, pedestrian is, any conveyance moved by human power except bicycles or tricycles.
Right. So the sidewalk, the portion of the street or highway set aside for pedestrian travel, if you can, do we need to say or?
I would, so I think something that we could add here is, sidewalk / multi-use trail. Portion of a street or highway set aside for, human powered travel, something like that.
Do you think we have to have a separate definition for the multi-use trail?
I mean,
So it's
Not
Right.
necessarily. I think we could decide that all sidewalks are multi-use trails unless otherwise, posted. And it doesn't necessarily have to fit like the wide sidewalk definition or, in practice. It just means that people that don't want to be in the street and are on some sort of human power device can get up on the sidewalk to
Mhm.
not get hit,
Okay.
right?
So we should add.
I mean, I think it makes
Add
sense. I think it makes sense to just,
So sidewalk / multi-use trail.
yeah. Because that way we can broaden the definition so it doesn't just have to be for pedestrians, because a lot of sidewalks in Easthampton are not just for pedestrians.
So what was it?
Multi-use trail.
But do you think we should have a separate definition? Because could you argue that like the bike path and all those things are, while there's no similarities and overlap of use, there are differences, including like the fact that there's usually a line, for some of them at least, a line of division down the middle, and
Right.
there's specific rules, and we have ordinance that talks about how it's used. Like, should we incorporate a separate definition just for that?
I mean, we could, or we could just have a definition that bike trail.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. bike path.
Yeah, bike path,
multi-use,
and,
yeah.
and we could say multi-use bike path.
Right,
So like you could have a multi-use sidewalk and you can also have a multi-use bike path.
yeah. I'm just
Um,
wondering if because obviously this was written before the rail
Before the
trail
bike,
existed.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that would just generalize it enough that, a kid that's riding his scooter on the sidewalk from getting stopped and having his scooter confiscated for breaking the law.
Although I
Because he's
think
not a
I
pedestrian.
think I noticed that there was something in the there was that's considered. I think I was thinking about that, but I think that a scooter is considered a pedestrian because any person.
Oh, any
afoot-
conveyance.
yeah. Just anything, but,
Well, actually, you know what? The easiest way to do then is to change the definition of pedestrian and make a pedestrian any person afoot or riding on a conveyance moved by human power, period. Take away the exception for bicycles and tricycles because sidewalks allow bicycles and tricycles by ordinance.
But do you think that because there's separate rules and regulations for the use of bicycles that you might want to?
I haven't. We had. I don't think there was a definition for bicycle. Or
There's not a definition here, but since usually like rules dealing with people riding bicycles might differ than just pedestrian rule. I don't know. That's just my counter to that.
yeah, I don't know. I suppose as we go through it, we'll find out. But
Do you want me to?
I don't think it would hurt to take out except bicycles and tricycles. That's just my initial thought.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it'll change anything materially. Like it won't change the fact that bicycles are not allowed on Union Cottage in Maine.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
So what that would imply then is anyone on a bicycle has the same rights as a pedestrian. Do you mind if I just look up what's like the state piece says about like if there's a differentiation like on like accepted state law about differentiating between just a pedestrian and someone on a bicycle just to make sure that we're not running afoul of like preemption by state language.
Yeah, I mean, and it might be my guess is that it's different because they're going to have an exhaustive list of definitions. We don't have an exhaustive list. So, I mean, maybe what we do is we add a definition for bicycle in here,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it doesn't exist now. I was just saying, oh, well, we could just take that out. Maybe it doesn't change anything in a negative way because it's not saying, pedestrians and bicycles have the same rights or right of way. It's just saying that, if someone is riding on a sidewalk, because that's
Right.
the only other pedestrian, right?
Mhm.
Then they're not afoul of traffic rules and order.
Mhm. Mhm.
So let me ask you a question then. So what about, so like, I think you both have bikes with motors on them.
Mhm.
Are those technically considered bicycles by definition?
Yes.
So you could ride those on the sidewalk?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, because they're still pedal powered.
Yeah, okay. All right, just making
But
sure.
like one of those electric motorcycles.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's another argument, though. Not argument, but the kind of point of like analysis. And I apologize for belaboring this. Just because the sidewalk is set aside for pedestrian, set aside for pedestrian travel, doesn't mean that other uses can't occur there
right.
if allowed.
Right.
So
I think that's fine. We should be cautioned to dig this deeply into
Yeah.
every,
right,
because
yeah.
we'll be here in on a 2 days a week meeting.
Yes. Okay.
We'll be
So
here in February.
there's a few things I'll look into. I'll just look into a few things about, but just in terms of there's any reason we wouldn't want to. It would be that we wouldn't want to remove the bicycle or tricycle exemption for
Right.
pedestrians. Okay, so
Yeah.
snow vehicle, street or highway, taxi cab stands, which I don't think we have any.
No, we don't.
Tow zone, I just changed to city council
City
there
council.
for the election. Traffic.
And I'm just throwing it out there. ridden or herded
Herded
animals
animals.
shouldn't be there, but
I think herded animals is fine to take
Yeah.
out.
Okay, you want to remove herded animals? I might want to include ridden animals, but
That's so
herded,
funny.
yeah, okay, so we'll remove herded animals. Okay,
Can I just, sorry.
yeah.
One thing I thought of as we went past snow vehicle is, do we want to broaden that like to, other types of, gas powered vehicles like dirt bikes and quads and,
Oh,
and maybe even like the new like high powered battery, like, electric dirt bikes, like,
because they're basically describing a snowmobile or something with like
Yeah,
treads.
yeah, they're describing a snowmobile. And the reason I know the reason why they're describing a snowmobile is because it's against ordinance to ride down
Mm-hmm,
the bike path on
Right.
a snowmobile.
yeah.
Mhm.
A motor vehicle designed to travel over snow or ice supported. Let me,
So it's maybe either adding those other definitions,
mhm.
or expanding that one.
Yeah, maybe so what I can do is I'll look farther down. I'll look farther down in the traffic rules in order
Yeah.
to see where, like,
Where
what this
it's-
applies to.
Yep.
And then I think we can then bring that back and does that sound reasonable?
Yep.
Okay. Traffic, remove herded animals, traffic control area. Traffic control signal. Traffic island. U-turn. Vehicle. Yeah, I will look into it. It might be good for us to put some sort of multi-use path
Yeah.
into the, okay. All right, Article 2, authority and duties of police. Police to direct traffic. It shall be the, anything in section 1-2. My only question was, I know, I can't remember, I don't think it was through any sort of ordinance. I think it was through police policy, but I might be wrong. When we updated recently the rules about traffic control officers,
Mhm.
such officers, do we need to reference that here at all, or is that being excessive? In other words,
They would, so maybe, yeah, I think the way we would address that is in the first sentence, and we could just say, it shall be the duty, of the chief of police to designate, resources to enforce these provisions. So we can just generalize it a little bit, so then it, it would encompass they're not officers, but they are trained and they are allowed to do it. So you can just we could just wordsmith that to make it so, because the chief of police is gonna be the one that designates them anyway.
right, okay, I'll just put a note there to wordsmith that. Section 1-3. Section 1-4. And I make comments there. Section 1-5, exemptions, that makes sense. Obedience to police. Any concerns?
That's a good question, because I feel like there's some things that could be considered a lawful order, but it might not, it might be your right to not, it might be your constitutional right to not
Oh,
comply.
it shall be unlawful for any person to refuse or fail to comply with any lawful order.
Like, I think that there's some situations where a police officer might like a lawful order, it might be reasonable for them to ask for ID, but I think there's situations where you don't have to produce that ID. So I just don't want to get us afoul of
But is that considered, would that be considered unlawful though? Like, in other words, they're at like, where they're where they're
I don't
acting, yeah. Let me show this to Scribner or something like that. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And Barbara outlined this section but we're kind of doing this in the police annual report.
Yeah.
The only thing, so the chief of police to make the annual accident report, we kind of already do that, and I don't have an issue with it. The driver file is something that, so I'll just read this out loud. Police to keep a driver file. A, police shall keep a record of all operators involved in accidents within
When
their municipality. The chief of police shall report to the register of motor vehicles such operators as are found to be constant violators of these regulations. I guess I
feel like that is 100% covered by state law.
Yeah, I mean, I
Doesn't
could
need
just
to be said.
check. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess I could just check with PD if they even need to do that, or if they do that. Like the first one makes sense, and I like keeping that in there. It actually creates like transparency and
Mhm.
oversight. This I don't really. I'm not sure. Again, if this is like some old thing. So
Well, and since the post commission, like all that stuff is going to be like searchable, shareable, like
Right.
the state law. I mean, it's so
Mhm.
it might be a moot point.
Yeah.
Just one other thing with the annual report,
Mhm.
I think we could potentially take out the town part because we're not town anymore.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, city. Yeah, I should. I think we could probably agree. Like anywhere we're town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Find and replace.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, section 1-9, police to submit annual traffic safety report, which we've had them doing as well. And this kind of again supports and codifies some of the work we've been doing here. The numbers of operators reported to the registry of motor vehicles. So we have to double check 1-8, and then he changed the they shall report other pertinent data which they've been doing. So I don't necessarily have an issue with that unless either of you do. Okay.
So just quickly, I just looked, the legal definition of a lawful order is something that is issued by a competent authority, is specific, and does not conflict with an individual's constitutional or statutory rights.
Oh, there you go. So
So
it's all set.
That's good.
Yes, we
Okay.
don't need to do anything with it. It covers that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Article 3, traffic signs, signals, markings, and islands, section 1-10, and item A. Item B, the only issue would be just city council. I didn't have any issues with that. Item C, item D. There's that editor's note there, and I just made a note to myself that said no re-city council. Like, so the editor's note is to convey the change from a board of survey to a town of board of selectmen. So now we'll have to make another editor's note or something like that, or whatever, or just delete. I don't know. We can.
Yeah, or just make one sentence that, became, the Board of Survey ceased to exist at this time, Board of Selectmen ceased to exist at this time, or,
Right.
Whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
It should be easy enough.
Okay. Section 1-11, display of unauthorized signs, signals, and markings prohibited. 1-2, obedience to traffic signs, signals, and marking. That seems kind of obvious. Section 1-13, interference with signs or signals. The only thing I had there was, so you can't go like mess up a stop sign or paint over it, but I just made a note to myself, is there anywhere where there's actually a fine for that? Or is it just so you can't do it? So I think if that's rules in there, there should probably be a penalty. And so I didn't dig deep enough to see if there was one, but we probably want to have a fine associated with that if we're gonna.
Or just something about destruction of public property.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it's like very specific like thing. So my only input there is we should probably have a fine associated with it. Agree with that. I don't know. I can determine that for sure. Traffic islands.
There's a lot that needs to be done there.
Yeah, I have to go back and look at that too. Yeah, I just, so, I mean, why do you have?
I don't think it's been updated since 1991.
Yeah.
We've put a lot of rotaries in since 1991. So it's just a matter of literally going through, like maybe looking at the map and just finding them. So that way we don't try to pull it from memory.
Greg might be able to help.
I was going to say this might be something we just asked.
Yeah.
Update this list for us.
Yeah, I'll send it to him and
Okay.
And I think that brings us to Article 4, so we can pick up there next time.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Sounds good.
Look at that. Any further input on anything else? I feel like this is a really productive meeting.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, from Councilor Jeremy, second, Councilor Riley, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.